All right, everybody. Joining me on the show right now is Mike Herndon. You can check him out covering all things Tennessee Titans over at paulkaharski.com. You can listen to him as a co-host of the podcast, Football and Other F Words. And Mike, I appreciate the time. I'm looking forward to talking Titans with you once again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We have a lot of Titans fans down here in this area of Alabama. I would say it's Derrick Henry related, but I feel like there was Titan fans before in Alabama before that. Just so you know,
Yeah,
just the jurisdiction of it's kind of a wide range, but it's
sure.
been an interesting all season already. We're not even out of the NFL season with the playoffs and Super Bowl coming up this Sunday, but still interesting all season so far for the Titans.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, the big news being Vrabel being let go and replaced by Brian Callahan, and um, I that came as a bit of a surprise to me that they moved on from Vrabel. I still thought I still do think he's a good football coach. I understand some of the differences in the vision that the ownership has. And frankly, I support the vision that ownership has as far as taking this team forward into more of the modern NFL as far as a focus on the passing game, an embracing of analytics and things like that. Just kind of more uh, modernizing of the franchise, I think is probably a good way to put it. And I'm for that. And I hate that it came at the expense of what I think is a very good football coach. So it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. I'm encouraged by Callahan and everything so far. But yeah, it'll be a very interesting transition.
You think part of it was too because okay, you're looking at a team. Okay, Ryan Tannehill, aging quarterback. You've obviously moved on. Will Levis is your future. Derrick Henry, safe to assume he's not going to be on the Titans next year. You got some older players, kind of you're looking to transition out of. Just okay, let's just even though like you said, Mike Vrabel's a tremendous head coach, just kind of transition as you say, kind of like a new era of Titans football.
It definitely is kind of a natural transition point for them, given the composition of the roster, and the writing's been kind of on the wall for a while now that this team was headed towards this moment at some point, in the relatively near future. They tried to hold it together as best they could, but I mean, you saw the offensive line. The offensive line had been aging for years. I mean, there was one point where Taylor Lewan, Roger Saffold, Ben Jones, and Dennis Kelly were all on the wrong side of 30. So you've got four 30-year-old plus offensive linemen in your starting five, with Nate Davis being really kind of the only pup in the group. You're headed towards a big transition there. And then the same goes for Tannehill. And then Henry is, he just turned 30, but he's, at running back, 30 is 35,
Mm-hmm.
for other positions. So it's definitely a natural transition point for the roster. They're pivoting to Will Levis and what the future will hold there. Tajay Spears, obviously, kind of going to be the running back of the future for this franchise as well. So it's going to be fascinating to see how it all goes. But yeah, it's kind of an out with the old and in with the new situation with Tennessee kind of across the board at this point.
Yeah, kind of the ultimate way of hitting the reset button if there ever kind of ever was one for a franchise. And with Mike Vrabel, you kind of really good head coach. I know the last 2 years for the Titans didn't go well, as you said, aging team, but then first 4 years, winning seasons. This team got to the AFC Championship game just a couple of years ago, ran into Patrick Mahomes. How surprised are you that he didn't land somewhere else?
I'm pretty surprised that he did not get another head coaching job. Count me among the ones that thought that the minute he was fired, he'd have people lining up to hire him. I'm surprised it has not gone this way. I'm especially surprised, like someone like Dan Quinn, that gets a job, but Vrabel does not. That's pretty shocking to me. And the only thing I can think is that maybe some of the stuff with the infighting with ownership and Carthon and things like that, maybe that kind of information getting out has soiled his reputation a little bit among the greater NFL market. So about people pay attention to that kind of stuff, and you don't want somebody who can't get along with others, can't play nice with others in the building, because it's just toxic for the entire organization. So I wonder if that has something to do with it. But I am surprised that he does not have a head coaching job right now.
And especially when you look at the last game of the season when they beat Jacksonville, not Jacksonville out of the postseason, you're seeing a team look. These were veterans. They just said, "Okay, our season's over with. We're looking ahead to vacation time. What we're going to do when when we clean out our lockers." That
Yeah.
team came out and played like they were playing for a playoff spot just as much as Jacksonville was. To me, I also look at that like that's a good sign for coach. I know you talked about the arguing with the upper management and stuff like that, but still, when you see a team that's out of it, has really nothing to play for, come out and play the way they did that last game of the regular season, that's also got to be a good sign or a positive thing when you look at a head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Vrabel, certainly the players wanted to play for him. There's been some, and to me, I think this is all kind of revisionist history stuff going on now that people are saying, oh, well, the players didn't really like him. And Wesley Woodyard went on the, radio and talked about how, the Vrabel had a big ego and stuff like that. And people have run with that to kind of trash him since. But that goes completely counter to what we heard from guys like Kenny Vaccaro, guys like Derrick Henry, guys like Jeffrey Simmons. There's countless numbers of players, Ben Jones, Taylor Lewan, like all these guys come out and they will go to the mat for Vrabel as the best coach that they've ever played for, a guy that truly cared about them as a person, got them prepared for games, knew what he was doing, all of this. So, I think Vrabel certainly did a good job here during his time as the head coach, as far as executing what you want a head coach to execute. I think some of the, now that he's fired, it's easy for everyone to point fingers and place all the blame on him. He's this big idiot. But I mean, we're 2 years removed from him taking a team that was severely injured for most of the season to the 1 seed. Without Derrick Henry and without, all these other pieces that were banged up over the back half of that 2021 season. We're only 2 years removed from that. I mean, he won Coach of the Year and everyone was, singing his praises and over the moon about him. So I don't think Mike Vrabel got stupid in 2 years. I think there's just a roster that fell apart around him, and that's what happens. Good coaches with bad rosters are usually bad football teams. I'm sorry, there's not miracle workers among the coaching ranks for the most part. There's some that are better than others, obviously, but you can't take a roster with no real talent and build them into a Super Bowl contender. That just doesn't happen.
No, it definitely does not. Let's talk about the new guy, Brian Callahan. Was that one expected for a lot of people that cover the Titans that are close to this franchise, and was a surprise?
He was on my short list going into, as soon as they announced they were firing Vrabel. Everyone kind of puts together what do the lists look like as far as who's out there, who could be intriguing to them. And Callahan was in my top 3 from the start. I had Ben Johnson kind of circled as my number 1 target for them specifically. I never thought they'd get in on the Belichick thing or the Harbaugh thing, because look, if you're going away from Mike Vrabel and you don't want him, apparently because he could not play well with others. Jim Harbaugh ain't gonna play well with anybody, right? Like if
No.
Jim Harbaugh comes to your team, it is the Jim Harbaugh show,
Mhm.
and everyone get out of his way because it's gonna be his way or the highway, and that just wasn't gonna fit with what Amy Adams Strunk wants to build in Tennessee. So I never thought they'd get in on that. Same thing really for Belichick too. So I figured they'd go with somebody who was a little bit on the younger side, maybe more willing to play ball, so to speak, with Rand Carthon and the rest of the front office there. And so Callahan was on my short list. And of course, once Ben Johnson, it became apparent that he really wasn't interested in the Titans job. And turns out he really wasn't interested in any jobs this cycle again, which is just an odd situation to me. I'm still pretty shocked that he did not take a swing at trying to become a head coach. But Callahan to me ended up being my top choice. And I kind of thought it was the direction that they would go, because it was an offensive coach. Usually if you fire a defensive coach, most teams end up hiring an offensive coach or vice versa. You try to fix the problem that the last guy couldn't solve. And Callahan brings that to the table. He's known as a quarterback's guy, which I think is important when you've got a young quarterback like Will Levis that you want to develop and get something out of. And regardless of your mileage on Will Levis, like, some people like him, some people don't. There's a wide varying of opinions on him. I think he flashed enough this year that at the very least you need to see what you can get out of him in 2024. So I think that's got to be the game plan going into this year is get Callahan in, let him work with him, let him mold him, see what he can do in year 2. Callahan's already talked about, it'll be different for him this year because he's going to be able to get all the reps in training camp and OTAs. He's going to be, the starter all offseason. And that's kind of set, at this point. So I'm excited to see what Callahan can do with Levis and, his experience working with, Peyton Manning and Matthew Stafford and Joe Burrow and, the fact that he grew up around his dad and hanging out with Rich Gannon with the Raiders and things like that. I mean, this guy's been around some really good quarterbacks and has picked up a lot of things. And when he talks, Will Levis should be listening because, this guy comes with a hefty enough resume and Rolodex that he has instant credibility to me, especially with the quarterback position. So I'm certainly I'm not surprised that they went this direction, but I'm very happy that they did because I think this is a good hire. I think Callahan's a good head coaching candidate, and I'm excited to see what he does here.
And I know in his introductory press conference, talked about he will call the plays. You think there should be any concern? I mean, this is the first time he will be doing that as a coach because they're at Cincinnati. Coach Taylor, he was the play caller. So you think any concern with that? The first time Callahan's going to be calling plays.
I could see there being some concern just in the fact that look, being a head coach is a big job. You're in charge of a lot of stuff that he's never had to do before. And especially on game day. Like I worry about it a little bit less, maybe during the week because, it's going to be largely the same for him during the week as far as putting together the game plan and things like that. Because apparently, if you listen to Zach Taylor or really any report around Cincinnati, Callahan had a huge hand in building the game plan, the offensive game plan every week. He was not the play caller in Cincinnati, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't really given full offensive coordinator responsibilities during the week. The biggest difference will just be who is talking into the quarterback's headset on game day. And so trying to balance that with keeping up with everything else going on in the game, players that are injured that you need to get reports from the training staff on, when to call timeouts, game management, what you want to do if you get the ball back with 3 minutes left to go, what you want to do if like all the decisions that a head coach has to make to manage the game, in addition to calling plays, is a lot to put on anyone's shoulders. So it'll be interesting to see how he kind of handles all of that. But I do think that it is an advantage to have your head coach be your offensive play caller because if things work out, right? Like this is all contingent on if things work out. But if things work out, the voice in your quarterback's ears for the next 10 years, say things go great and Callahan and Levis are here for the next 10 years, the voice will be the same voice year in and year out, no matter what. Like there's nowhere he's going to go. He's going to be here. Nobody can poach him and take him away and put you back to square one. He is the voice, and that relationship with Will Levis will be the critical relationship for the Titans moving forward and figuring out how far they can take this thing. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles it, but I think it is a good thing that he's calling plays.
Yeah, because that's always the flip side when you have a defensive head coach. Well, your offensive coordinator may get poached, which Tennessee knows about that when Arthur Smith left to be the Atlanta head coach. I mean, I'm also there's also a lot of Atlanta Falcon fans around this area. They're not too happy with what Arthur Smith did in his 3 years, but I think people forget he was a really good offensive coordinator. And a big reason why Ryan Tannehill had almost the career turnaround that he had was Arthur Smith. So,
absolutely.
And when you talk about Callahan, he mentioned some of the quarterbacks, and I saw him mention it too in his press conference. He worked with Peyton Manning. He's worked with Matthew Stafford, and obviously Joe Burrow. But for me, something very impressive, the work that offensive staff did with Jake Browning when Joe Burrow went down. Because this is a team, you think Joe Burrow goes, okay, their season's over. They were still in the playoff hunt last couple of weeks of the season. They did a tremendous job with Jake Browning. You got to think if you're a Tennessee Titans fan, that should scream optimism on what he can do with Will Levis.
Yeah, absolutely. And Browning, I wasn't big on Browning coming out of Washington, even as a draft prospect. I thought he was, extremely average, in pretty much every way. I was like, there's no way this guy's going to make it a pro. He had some performances for the Bengals down the stretch that I was like, man, I mean, that game, I think it was a Monday night game against Jacksonville, when he was like 32 of 37 for 350 something yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns. I mean, that was a fantastic performance. And to be able to coax that out of a backup quarterback who has like zero experience at the NFL level prior is really impressive. And more so than that, even, Joe Burrow has a specific way that he likes to run offense. And the Bengals, to their credit, largely tailored their offense to Joe Burrow, his preferences, his skill set, everything over the last 5 years since they've been there, or I guess 4 years since Burrow's been there. Burrow likes to get 5 out into the pass pattern. Burrow likes to operate out of shotgun. He doesn't like to turn his back to the defense. He wants to be able to look at the secondary and see what's happening, rather than turning his back and to run, hard play action, that kind of thing. So they have tailored that offense to him. Well, when Browning came in, they completely changed the offense. I mean, the offense was not the same Burrow offense. They did go under center more. They did run more hard play action stuff. They did get more kind of into their West Coast roots that Callahan has going back to his time, well, really his time with his father under John Gruden. So they completely molded that offense and changed that offense midseason to fit their quarterback, which is impressive flexibility, and the ability to execute that on the fly like that is really great. And it's not the first time they've done it either, because I mean they had elements of their run game that just were not working a couple seasons ago, and they completely changed their run game mid-season and went away from what wasn't working and found something that did work and completely transformed that season as well. So that staff has shown remarkable flexibility, and I hope and I think, based on everything you've heard Callahan say, they're going to tailor this offense to Will Levis and what Will Levis wants. And if Will Levis doesn't like whatever, isn't comfortable with certain plays, with certain elements, they're going to take them out and figure out something else to do. So I think it's encouraging the flexibility and the willingness to tailor your offense to what you have as a team, particularly at the quarterback position. And that's really what you want your coach to be able to do and have the most success. So I think Callahan checks that box, with extreme authority, given his background and what they've done in Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's this era of football. You do not want to be a hard-headed coach and run against a brick wall saying, I'm going to run exactly what I want to run. No, you tailor everything to what you have on the field. So they will draft at number 7 in the first round. All right, I'm going to put you in that room. You're in there with them. They said, Mike, who should we draft number 7? Where do you think the Titans should go with that pick?
Man, it's going to be such a difficult decision because there are some elite players. There are several elite players that are likely to be on the board at positions of need for the Titans. And look, they're all on the offensive side of the ball. Like, this is a great draft on the offensive side of the ball. There's some good defenders too, but none of them that are top 7 pick worthy type guys, in my opinion. So I think that pick's going to go offense, and it needs to. The Titans lack talent on that side of the ball to a large degree. We all know about the struggles at left tackle, and that's kind of the glaring thing. Joe Alt and Olufashano are tremendous prospects. I think both of them would be among, if you went back, 5 or 6 drafts, they'd probably be in the top 3 or 4 among all of the tackle prospects to come out over the last half decade at this point. So, like, we're talking about really, really high-end tackle prospects, and it's going to be very tempting to fix that problem for the next 10 years by just going and grabbing Joe Alt and plugging him in at left tackle next to Peter Skoronski and saying, all right, nobody's getting through on the left side from now on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is appealing to me. But on the other hand, you listen to Brian Callahan talk and what he said in the past about Jamar Chase versus Penei Sewell when they had to make that decision for the Bengals. And he has talked about in interviews, he said, I want the guy who can go make a play, who can go score a touchdown for us when we need a touchdown. And look, Left tackle will do a lot for you. It'll help you. It is a critical element of this team, as the Titans have found out and know better than anybody over the last 2 years. But they don't score touchdowns, right? Like, so you got an opportunity for like a Malik Neighbors, who is a massive playmaker, big time juice, speed, every box you want to check as far as a wide receiver, fantastic player. You're going to have a shot at a guy like Roma Dunze from Washington, again, like 6'3", 215, prototypical number one receiver kind of guy. Mm-hmm. Those two, and then Joe Alt and Fashanu, give me any of those four players and I'll be happy. But if you made me pick, I think I'd still lean the tackle, just simply because there are wide receivers that are going to be available at pick 38, even into day 3 that can help you. And history tells you that you can find wide receivers later in the draft. You cannot find franchise left tackles later in the draft. You just can't, even though it is a good tackle class. And there could be a guy at 38, like Patrick Paul or somebody like that could be intriguing. They're not going to be the prospect that Alt or Fashanu is. So to me, Joe Alt's my number one choice. Fashanu I'd be perfectly happy with, but if Alt's on the board, give me Alt.
Yeah, it is, with the NFL draft and the way college football has gone, there's so many guys catching passes, getting reps because of spread offense and receivers. There's every year I feel like every year we're saying this is the best receivers class of all time.
It's a great one this year, yeah.
And we just year after year we're getting these super talented. Look, just go to LSU. LSU always has talented receivers, mostly over there.
They've got 2 that should probably be first rounders this year. So
I still say to this day, I do not know how Les Miles did not win a national championship when he had Zach Mettenberger, he had Jarvis Landry and Beckham on the team together.
Crazy.
But finally, before I let you go, of course, Super Bowl week. Who do you like this weekend between the Chiefs and the 49ers?
I think everyone's going to be saying this week, but I think the 49ers are the better team. I cannot pick against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. They've been there. They've done that. They just seem to find a way in the playoffs every single time. Until they are beaten, I'm taking the Chiefs against anybody. So give me the Chiefs and what I think is going to be a very entertaining, very close and competitive Super Bowl. So I'm excited to watch it.
I think there's a lot of people that have picked against the Chiefs in the playoffs against the Bills and the Ravens are probably not going to do it for the Super Bowl, just from the fact is they don't want to pick against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in that group again. But it's going to be interesting. Be interested with the Titans. What else happens here in the offseason, how they improve this roster in the draft. And it's been fun, Mike, having you on talking all things Tennessee Titans. If the listeners, the viewers want to check you out, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Check me out on Twitter at Mike Herndon NFL, and then paulkowarski.com for all my written work. Come check it out.
All right, everybody, go check out all the work there done by Mike. You're going to follow all things Tennessee Titans. And once again, Mike, appreciate the time, and I hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
Absolutely. Would love to.